How does one really introduce a Kanye West review at this point? It's the man you know of. You've seen him in the headlines. You've seen him with his drama with Kim, his antics that he seems to get a pass for generally. And you've loved his music for years. And so have I. So have I. His music has been fantastic for such a long time. I think his 2010s output has certainly been weaker than his 2000s output, but it doesn't mean to say that everything that's come out in the 2010s is bad, because some of it's actually been really quite good. And even when there have been albums that I don't particularly like all that much, for example, Jesus, The Life of Pablo, among others, I've still liked individual tracks from them, which has always kept this kind of glimmer of hope in me that he will drop an album that I am going to love again. But every time he does, I'm always slightly disappointed by it. I'm always let down. I'm always just like, well, you did this to yourself. Was I really going to like an album from him at this point? Probably not. And with the fact that he gets a pass for seemingly everything he does, and I'm not just saying the things he says or, you know, the things he literally does, but I just mean in terms of the music. I mean, this guy dropped Jesus is King, and I still saw people defending it on a hill that they were willing to die on, even though Jesus is King was just such a weak release, and yet he managed to get a pass for it. Donda is not on the level of weakness that Jesus is King is, but I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's so much better, or if it's even that much better. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that, because I really don't think it is. But judging by the reception to this album and, you know, the rollout that this album got, I think the hype for this one was much higher than I think I anticipated coming off the back of Jesus is King, because I really thought at this point people were going to start to fade away with the Kanye hype. But no, Donda is getting huge amounts of praise, aside from The Independent, who gave it like 0 stars. But regardless of any personal issues you may have with Kanye West himself, we're here to talk about the music. And Donda is longer than anything ever, and it fucking feels it. I always try my best not to be like talking about the length of an album, because it's not always a detriment to the music, but I think the length is felt with Donda. I really think this album is far too long for what it's trying to achieve. And it wouldn't be so bad if every track felt like it was purposeful, it was adding to an overall theme, an overall story, an overall narrative. And to be fair, quite a few of the tracks do. But a bulk of this album I really don't think adds to what Kanye is attempting to achieve. So Donda is mostly a love letter to God, really. I mean, this is once again Kanye channeling his new found love for religion, his new sort of adoration for religion. I mean, he always was a religious person. Just go back to 2004 and listen to a song like Jesus Walks. He's always been pretty open with his Christianity, but this time around it feels like it's at the forefront of everything. And this wouldn't be so bad if there were interesting things being said along the way, but I think for the most part I'm not really hearing anything on this album that I haven't really heard before in regards to religion or Christianity. And he often isn't really adding anything new or exciting or engaging to the conversation. You got tracks like God Breathed, Praise God, Keep My Spirit Alive. These tracks aren't really bad in the sense that, you know, the lyrics are bad or anything like that. I wouldn't really say there's anything inherently wrong with them. I just don't really get anything when I listen to them. I just don't get anything out of them. I just don't get that emotion that I feel like the album is trying to give you. And I thought this exactly the same. I thought the exact same thing and said the exact same thing in my Jesus is King review. Like, there was just nothing that made me feel like I was attached to what Kanye was saying. There was nothing in his delivery that was keeping me like, ooh. The lyrics really could be stronger, particularly on Keep My Spirit Alive, just to emphasize the emotion, the passion, you know? I just need that passion and I'm just not getting it. The spark just isn't there. Maybe because this track is so far into the album that at that point I'm just getting jaded by everything I'm hearing. But even with God Breathes, which is like a few tracks in, I still feel the same. Where's the detail? What does it ultimately mean? Who cares that God breathed on this? Like, I just don't gain anything from this, and it just feels a bit like too worshipy, a bit too you know, let's praise God, let's congratulate God for doing the good thing. It just feels like something you've heard time and time again without really any clear message that comes at the end of it. All that comes at the end of it with this track is like an extended outro that goes absolutely nowhere. The instrumental just fizzles out and just lingers. Like, there is just nothing engaging about this to me at all. And I've already mentioned, you know, some of these tracks really feel like they just need a bit of a fire lit under their arse just to keep the momentum going, just to keep the passion alive with the lyrics and Kanye's singing. But I still think that's better than most of how the music sounds on this, because honestly, some of these tracks are just so weak. Jail has this awful vocal effect on Kanye's voice at the beginning, and for a good chunk of the track, it just sounds hideous, honestly. Like, he sounds like he's singing in a kitchen or something, or like, I don't know. There was something like people used to do years ago before like speakers were a big thing, and they just put like their phones on loudspeaker, like the volume really high up, and then put it in like a bowl, and then it would kind of like boom up and it would create a speaker effect, but it sounded like shit. This sounds like that. The instrumental needs filling out. It almost feels like the track is trying to be hype and amped up, but the instrumental is not there to back it up at all. And then you got Jay's verse with his bars. That selfie thing that he says is just atrocious. Like, what? How long has it been since these guys like brought a song out together in the way that they did on this album? It feels like a big moment, you know, Jay and Kanye, whoa, they're collaborating. And this is what they gave us? What? Off the grid as well? Kanye's hook is shite, man, on this. This sounds really bad. And it's a shame because the beat, the guest features, Fivio, man, he kills it. He sounds great over this beat. He sounds hard as hell. Man, he just doesn't slow down. It's one of the best examples I've heard in such a long while where the artist who is making the song sounds completely out of place on their own song. Like, there aren't that many examples of where that actually applies, but this is up there with the best of examples. And then he offers a verse at the end with the bloody calling his God his bestie, and he's like, you know, he sees Messi playing football. What the hell are you talking about, man? Like, this is supposed to be like a celebration of God, and the best you're gonna give us is he's your bestie. Yeah, bro, Jesus and God, they're my besties, yeah. Not all the features steal the show, though, in my opinion. I mean, honestly, The Weeknd sounds just like he's on autopilot on Hurricane. I was really surprised, actually. This was another track I saw getting a lot of hype leading up to the release. I just feel like I'm listening to The Weeknd do The Weeknd. And don't get me wrong, I've praised The Weeknd a lot on this channel. I am a fan of The Weeknd, don't get me wrong. But, like, this is just the most Weeknd singing ever. Like, it just feels like everything he's ever done. Like, I just want him to switch it up a little bit sometimes, because I'm just kind of getting bored of this kind of similar singing that he does, and it just feels like a bit out of place on this. Remote Control, again with the lyrics just really being pretty basic, kind of referring to God as being the remote control, and also trying to make like some kind of statement on technology and people using technology a lot. Like, it's just a bit of a miss, really. But again, not really adding much to the conversation in regards to religion. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not all bad. I'm not here to just shit on this album, because I do think there are some really good moments. It's it's inevitable that there's going to be some great moments on an album this long from an artist that is as talented as Kanye. I mean, come on. There's always going to be at least one or two tracks that I'm going to like from any album he puts out. And this is no different. I think Moon is pretty endearing. I think the singing on this one's pretty lovely. It sounds kind of what I've been talking about, the passion that I've been looking for. It really hits here. Believe What I Say is honestly just what I wanted the whole album to be. It's got a bit of a soulful edge. It's got a Lauryn Hill sample that really sounds tasteful as hell. It's got it all, really, and it's got Kanye riding the beat nicely. He's giving us some pretty good rapping here. The hook is good too. Like, if the whole album just stayed in this lane, I think we would have had a great release here, because Kanye's honestly in his bag when he does stuff like this. This was what Late Registration was filled with. The College Dropout was filled with this too. Not to say that an artist always has to give you everything that they gave you before. I just think this is honestly where he's best, honestly, and I think this track proves it. On this album, this is easily one of the highlights. Jesus Lord taps into a bit more of the details looking for lyrically too, except ironically it goes to the other end of the scale and goes on for like 9 minutes, and I just really can't picture a life where I would want to sit through this again. But I think while it's on, it's a nice listen. I think Jay Electronica actually steals the show here with his bars, because he really goes very specific with them, referencing, like, you know, the Downing Street and, you know, George Bush and all of the things that, you know, many countries have committed in regards to like atrocities with foreign policy and stuff like that. It's pretty interesting how deep he went actually with this. But I think I'll still take this track over some of the others, which I just can't really get with. New Again is musically really poor. It sounds like it's trying to be Flashing Lights, but ends up being like Heartbeat from Camp. Like, this is like what Flashing Lights would sound like if it was on Childish Gambino's Camp. And don't even get me started on Television. I don't even know what to say about this one, man. This one just sounds so hideous. Like, it's not supposed to be this way. Like, it's supposed to be a track that's dedicated to Pop Smoke, and it ends up sounding like this. Like, what? It's a baffling moment on the album, honestly, but it's not like every track sounds awful or anything like that, but so much of the majority of this album just leaves me feeling a bit Come to Life is a great moment coming right at the end of the album. This honestly should have been the closer. I think this works better as a closer. The piano on this one, man. The piano on this one. This track, man. Woo, it is beautiful. But I do think it should have been the closer. Like, seriously, I think this was the better way to close out the album. If you cut it down to like 10 tracks and this was the closer, like, I'd be way more happy with that. But yeah, I'm just in awe of that piano. It sounds like Masakatsu Tagaki like composed it. I don't know where this piano playing came from, but like, it's beautiful. But like, that's it. Like, that's it in terms of the positives. There's really not that many. There's like 3 or 4 tracks that I would really say are good, but this thing goes on for like 20 odd tracks at 90 minutes in length, and I'm sorry, man, but it just does not warrant its runtime at all. Like, there are albums out there that are very long and they warrant their runtime. It's not to say all long albums do not deserve to be long. That is not true. But I'm just saying, this album for me is just not keeping me engaged for the runtime. But what did I expect? I mean, like I say, not really the biggest Kanye fan these days. I've really not loved anything he's put out in quite some time. Even Kids See Ghosts, which I know people don't really seem to agree with, because a lot of people love that album, but I personally do not see the love for it that it gets. I just don't see it. But yeah, Kanye these days, just not doing it for me, and this is just another example of that. There's such potential for this, for him to really go all out, give us just such a beautiful, emotive album that is just, you know, celebrating his love for God, I mean, I'm not personally religious myself, but I could definitely be on board with an album that does it well and does it in a beautiful way. But I don't think Kanye's given it us yet. I don't think Kanye's given it us yet. And I think if he ever does give it us, I think we'll look back on Jesus is King and Donda, and I think we'll be more negative towards them, because I think he's on his way to getting there with it, but he's not there yet. And that's usually when you look back on an artist's discography differently, when they give you that album that you're like, holy shit, this one is the one. And then you go back to the others and you're like, yeah, actually these weren't that good, but the one they've done now is great. And I think that could happen with Kanye, but I'm not too hopeful, really, personally. I think maybe my days with him as an artist are numbered, but we'll see. We'll see where he goes. 5 out of 10 from me. Pretty inevitable. I don't think anyone that watches this channel regularly was expecting me to, you know, come out and give this like a 9 or something. But yeah, I hope I've outlined my thoughts. I've laid out my opinions well enough for you to understand where I'm coming from. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Try not to be too mad. Just let me know. Have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. And goodbye.